Have you ever been told that keeping a secret is more important than your own peace of mind? That protecting someone else's reputation matters more than your own mental health? That you should just swallow the truth, smile, and pretend everything is fine because that's what family does? Well, I have. And let me tell you, the day I finally refused to keep that secret was the day I lost my entire family. But it was also the day I found myself. This is the story of how they pressured me to drop the truth for the sake of family unity, and how I chose to drop them from my life instead. It's a story about betrayal, manipulation, courage, and the painful realization that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are the ones who will sacrifice you first to protect their own comfort. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not alone. I know there are others out there who have been told to be quiet, to be small, to disappear their pain so that everyone else can keep pretending. And if that's you, I want you to know that your truth matters. Your voice matters. You matter. So settle in, because this story is long, it's painful, and it's real. And I promise you, by the end of it, you'll understand why I made the choice I did, even though it cost me everything I thought I knew about family. It started on what should have been an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I remember the exact moment because I've replayed it in my mind 1,000 times, wondering if there was any way I could have prepared myself for what I was about to discover. I was at my parents' house helping my mom organize some old boxes in the attic. She had asked me to come over, said she needed help sorting through decades of accumulated memories, photographs, documents, all the artifacts of a family life that I thought I knew inside and out. The attic was hot and dusty, filled with that particular smell of old paper and forgotten things. We were laughing, actually laughing, as we pulled out embarrassing photos from my childhood, reminiscing about family vacations and holidays that seemed so perfect in retrospect. My mom was in a good mood, telling stories I'd heard 100 times before, and I was enjoying this rare moment of connection with her. That's when I found the box. It wasn't labeled, just a plain brown box shoved in the corner behind some old Christmas decorations. Something about it caught my attention, maybe because it seemed deliberately hidden, tucked away where no one would casually stumble upon it. I pulled it out, and my mom's face changed instantly. The warmth drained from her expression, replaced by something I'd never seen before, a mixture of panic and anger and fear all rolled into one. She told me to put it back, her voice sharp in a way that made me freeze. But it was too late. My curiosity was already piqued, and some instinct told me that whatever was in that box was important. I opened it. Inside were documents, letters, photographs, and bank statements that told a story I had never heard before, a story that shattered everything I believed about my family. The details are complicated, involving financial manipulation, deliberate deception, and actions that hurt people I cared about, actions taken by someone I loved and trusted deeply. As I read through those papers, my hands started shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't just some minor family secret or embarrassing moment from the past. This was serious. This was something that had real consequences for real people, including me. My mom was talking, her words rushing out in a desperate stream, trying to explain, trying to justify, trying to minimize what I was seeing with my own eyes. She kept saying it wasn't what it looked like, that I didn't understand the full context, that it was complicated, that it was in the past and didn't matter anymore. But I could see the truth right there in black and white. Documents don't lie. Numbers don't lie. And the more she tried to explain it away, the clearer it became that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. This was a choice that had been made deliberately, repeatedly, over years. And everyone knew. That was the part that hit me hardest. This wasn't just one person's secret. This was a family conspiracy of silence. My father knew. My siblings knew. Extended family members knew. They had all collectively decided that this truth needed to stay buried, that protecting the person responsible was more important than acknowledging the harm that had been done. And I had been kept in the dark, not because I was too young or because they wanted to protect me, but because they knew I wouldn't go along with it. They knew I would have questions, objections, moral concerns. So they simply never told me, letting me live in blissful ignorance while they all shared this terrible knowledge. I left my parents' house that day in a daze, the box still in my hands because my mom had actually tried to physically take it from me, and I had refused to let it go. I drove home in complete silence, my mind racing, trying to process what I had just learned and what it meant for everything I thought I knew about my family. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like the foundation of my entire life had just cracked wide open. The next morning, I started making phone calls. I called my older brother first. thinking maybe he could help me make sense of this, thinking maybe he didn't know the full extent of what had happened. But the moment I brought it up, his tone changed. He got defensive immediately, asking how I found out, demanding to know what I had seen. When I told him about the box and what was in it, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then he said something that chilled me to my core. He said, "You need to forget about this. It's not your business. It's family business, and we've already handled it." Handled it? They hadn't handled anything. They had covered it up, buried it, pretended it never happened while real people dealt with real consequences. I tried to explain this to him, tried to make him understand why this mattered, why we couldn't just ignore something this serious. But he cut me off, his voice hard and cold. "Don't be naive," he said. "This is how families work. We protect each other. And right now, you're threatening to tear this family apart over something that's already done and can't be changed. Is that really what you want?" That conversation set the pattern for what would come next. Over the following days, I reached out to other family members, trying to find someone, anyone, who would acknowledge that what had happened was wrong and needed to be addressed. But instead of support, I found a wall of resistance. My younger sister cried and begged me not to make trouble. My father refused to discuss it at all, saying the matter was closed and I needed to respect his decision as the head of the family. My aunts and uncles either pretended they didn't know what I was talking about or gave me vague platitudes about forgiveness and moving forward. It felt like I had suddenly become the enemy, the problem, the troublemaker, simply because I had stumbled upon a truth that everyone else had agreed to keep hidden. The pressure started subtly at first. Little comments here and there about how I was overreacting or being too sensitive. Questions about why I couldn't just let it go and focus on the positive. Reminders of all the good times we'd had as a family, all the love and support I'd received over the years, as if that somehow canceled out or excused what I had discovered. They tried to make me feel guilty for even bringing it up, for disrupting the carefully maintained illusion of family harmony. My mom called me multiple times a day, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, alternating between begging me to drop it and accusing me of trying to destroy the family. She said I was being selfish, that I was only thinking about my own feelings and not considering the bigger picture. She reminded me of every sacrifice she had ever made for me, every time she had supported me, as if I now owed her my silence in return. The manipulation was subtle but constant, a steady drip of emotional pressure designed to wear down my resolve. Then came the family meeting. My father demanded it, said we all needed to sit down and resolve this situation once and for all. I should have known it was a trap, but part of me still hoped that maybe, in person, with everyone together, we could have an honest conversation about what had happened and how to move forward. I was so naive. I walked into my parents' living room to find everyone already there. My siblings, my aunts and uncles, even some cousins, all arranged like a tribunal. The atmosphere was tense and hostile from the moment I sat down. My father started by saying that this meeting was happening because I had discovered some sensitive family information and was having trouble understanding the situation in its proper context. Already the framing was wrong. I hadn't misunderstood anything. I had understood perfectly, and that was the problem. But before I could object, my brother jumped in, essentially giving a presentation on why what I had discovered wasn't actually that bad, explaining all the reasons and justifications and circumstances that supposedly made it acceptable, or at least understandable. He talked about family loyalty, about not judging others, about the importance of unity and keeping private matters private. Everyone else nodded along, murmuring agreement, occasionally adding their own thoughts about how families need to stick together through thick and thin. I sat there, feeling increasingly surreal, like I had walked into some kind of cult meeting where everyone had agreed on a shared reality that had nothing to do with actual truth. When it was finally my turn to speak, I tried to calmly explain why what had happened was wrong, why it needed to be acknowledged and addressed, why we couldn't just sweep it under the rug and pretend everything was fine. I talked about accountability, about integrity, about the people who had been hurt by these actions. But I could see I wasn't getting through. They weren't listening to understand. They were listening to respond, to counter, to shut down. That's when my mother played her trump card. She stood up, tears streaming down her face, and said that if I continued to pursue this, if I didn't agree to let it go right now, it would kill her. Literally kill her. She said the stress was too much, that her health couldn't take it, that I was putting her in an early grave with my stubbornness and selfishness. The room went silent. Everyone looked at me like I was a monster, like I was the one causing harm, like I was the villain in this story. My sister started crying too. saying she couldn't believe I would do this to our mother. That family was supposed to be more important than being right. My father just stared at me with cold disappointment, shaking his head slowly. And in that moment, I realized something crucial. This wasn't about truth or justice or doing the right thing. This was about control. This was about them maintaining their comfortable narrative where they were the good guys, where their choices were justified, where they never had to face any real consequences or uncomfortable truths. And I was threatening that narrative simply by refusing to pretend along with them. The meeting ended with an ultimatum. My father, speaking in his authoritative patriarch voice, told me I had two choices. I could either agree to never speak of this again, to destroy the documents I had found, to go back to being the daughter who didn't know about any of this, and we could all move forward as a family, or I could continue down this path, in which case I would be choosing to separate myself from the family, and I would have to live with the consequences of that choice. He made it clear that there was no middle ground, no compromise, no option where I could maintain my integrity and also maintain my relationships with them. It was all or nothing, silence or exile, their terms or no terms at all. I left that meeting feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. I drove home in a fog, pulled into my driveway, and just sat in my car for I don't know how long, trying to process what had just happened. My entire family had essentially told me that they valued their comfort more than they valued me, that they would rather lose me than face an uncomfortable truth, that I was disposable if I didn't play by their rules. The days that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I was torn apart by doubt and guilt. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being too rigid, too unforgiving, too focused on being right instead of preserving relationships. Maybe family was more important than principles. Maybe I was throwing away something precious over something that couldn't be changed anyway. The pressure intensified. My phone never stopped ringing. Text messages poured in from family members, some begging, some threatening, some trying different manipulation tactics. They tried everything. They tried making me feel guilty by talking about all the family events I would miss, all the relationships that would be damaged, all the pain I would cause, especially to my mother whose health was supposedly hanging by a thread because of my actions. They tried making me feel scared by hinting that if I went public with what I knew, there could be legal consequences for me, that I could be accused of defamation or causing harm. They tried making me feel crazy by insisting that I was blowing things out of proportion, that I was mentally unstable, that I needed therapy to deal with my issues around this. They even tried love bombing, with my mom suddenly sending me old photos and reminiscing about happy memories, trying to remind me of everything good about our family that I would be losing. But through all of this, something inside me was changing. With each manipulation attempt, with each guilt trip, with each threat, I was becoming clearer about what was really happening here. This wasn't about protecting family. This was about protecting lies. This wasn't about love. This was about control. And I was starting to realize that the family I thought I had, the loving, supportive, close-knit family I had always believed in, had never actually existed. It had been a performance, a carefully maintained illusion that required everyone to play their part and never question the script. And the price of admission to this family was my silence, my complicity, my willingness to betray my own values and ignore my own conscience. Was that a price I was willing to pay? For weeks, I went back and forth, sometimes convinced I should just give in and keep the peace, other times feeling angry and determined to stand my ground. I talked to friends outside the family, and their reactions were illuminating. They were horrified by what my family was asking me to do. They couldn't believe that my family would demand I cover up something serious just to avoid discomfort. Their perspective helped me see how abnormal this situation actually was, how toxic the family dynamic had become, how much I had been conditioned over my lifetime to prioritize family harmony over everything else, including my own integrity. I started reading about family dynamics, about enmeshment, about toxic family systems, about the scapegoat role, and so much of it resonated with me in ways I hadn't expected. I began to see patterns from my entire childhood, times when I had been subtly punished for asking too many questions, for being too honest, for not going along with the family narrative. I had always been the difficult one, the one who didn't quite fit, and now I understood why. I had a conscience that they found inconvenient. The breaking point came about 6 weeks after I found that box. My family organized a big gathering, a birthday party for my father, and they made it very clear that I was expected to attend and that this would be my opportunity to show that I was choosing family, choosing to move past this unpleasantness and return to the fold. The message was obvious. Show up, smile, pretend everything is fine, and we'll take you back. Don't show up. and you're making your choice final. I spent the entire week leading up to that party in agony, going back and forth, changing my mind multiple times. Part of me desperately wanted to just go, to take the easy path, to have my family back even if it meant compromising myself. But there was another part of me, a part that was growing stronger every day, that knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk into that party and pretend. I couldn't smile and hug people who had threatened me and manipulated me and tried to gaslight me into silence. I couldn't betray myself like that, even for the people I loved, even for the family I had always treasured. The morning of the party, I woke up knowing what I had to do. My hands were shaking as I wrote the message. I sent it to the family group chat where they had been planning the party. I kept it simple and clear. I said that I loved them all, but I could not and would not pretend that everything was fine when it wasn't. I said that I understood this meant I was choosing to step away from the family, but that it was a choice they had forced me to make by demanding my silence as the price of their love. I said that I hoped someday they would understand, but that I had to do what I knew was right, even if it cost me everything. The response was immediate and vicious. Messages flooded in, but they weren't asking me to reconsider or trying to understand my position. They were angry, accusatory, final. My brother called me selfish and said I was dead to him. My sister said I had broken Mom's heart and she would never forgive me. My father sent a single message saying I was no longer welcome in his home and to never contact any of them again. Extended family members piled on, people I had loved and trusted my whole life, all united in their anger at me for refusing to comply. Some of the things they said were so cruel, so personal, so designed to wound me in the deepest way possible, that I had to eventually mute the group chat because I couldn't take it anymore. In the span of a few hours, I went from having a large, loud, always present family to having no one. The silence was deafening. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, blocked by most of my family on social media, cut off from the people who had been the center of my world my entire life, and I cried harder than I had ever cried before. I grieved. I grieved for the family I thought I had. I grieved for the relationships I had lost. I grieved for the future I had imagined, with family dinners and holidays and being aunt to my siblings' kids and growing old surrounded by the people who were supposed to love me no matter what. All of that was gone now, and the loss was almost unbearable. But underneath the grief, there was something else. There was a tiny seed of relief, a small voice inside me that whispered that maybe, just maybe, I had done the right thing. That maybe choosing truth over comfort, integrity over belonging, self-respect over conditional love, was the bravest thing I had ever done. The months that followed were incredibly difficult. I had to relearn how to exist without my family as a constant presence in my life. Holidays were especially hard. That first Thanksgiving, I spent it alone with takeout and Netflix, trying not to think about the big family gathering happening without me, where I was probably being discussed and vilified. Christmas was even worse. I had always loved Christmas with my family, and the emptiness of that first Christmas without them felt like a physical wound. I struggled with depression, with doubt, with moments of intense longing to just apologize and go back, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Social situations became awkward because people would ask about my family, and I didn't know how to explain. Do I tell the truth and risk being judged? Do I lie and say we're fine? Do I give a vague answer about being estranged and deal with the uncomfortable questions that follow? I felt like I was constantly navigating a minefield of potential awkwardness. Some friends drifted away, either because they didn't know how to handle the situation or because they thought I was wrong to cut off my family. There's still such a strong cultural belief that family is everything, that you should forgive and forget no matter what, that choosing to walk away from blood relatives is somehow unnatural or wrong. I lost count of how many times someone told me that life is short, that I should reconcile, that family is all you have in the end, completely ignoring the reasons why I had made the choice I made. But slowly, gradually, something shifted. I started building a new life, a life that wasn't defined by family obligations and expectations and the constant need to maintain an illusion. I got into therapy, and my therapist helped me understand that what my family had done was a form of abuse, that demanding someone silence their truth and betray their values is a form of control and manipulation. She helped me see that real love doesn't come with conditions, that real family doesn't require you to make yourself small or silent to keep the peace. I started setting boundaries in other areas of my life too, realizing that the people-pleasing and conflict avoidance patterns I had learned in my family had infected all my relationships. I began to discover who I actually was when I wasn't constantly performing for my family's approval, when I wasn't constantly worried about keeping them happy. I made new friends, People who knew my story and supported my choice. People who understood that sometimes walking away is the healthiest option. I threw myself into hobbies and interests that my family had always subtly discouraged because they didn't fit their image of who I should be. I traveled alone for the first time and discovered that I actually enjoyed my own company. I started speaking my truth more openly, not just about my family situation, but about everything, and it was terrifying and liberating all at once. There were setbacks, of course. Days when I would see a photo of my family on social media, all together and smiling as if I had never existed, and it would gut me all over again. Moments when something good would happen and my first instinct would be to call my mom, only to remember that I couldn't. Times when I would doubt everything, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake, if I had thrown away something precious over pride or stubbornness. But each time I worked through those doubts, I came back to the same conclusion. I had done the right thing. Not the easy thing, not the comfortable thing, but the right thing. About a year after I walked away, something interesting started happening. A few family members began reaching out, quietly, privately, usually late at night. A cousin here, an aunt there, saying they understood why I had done what I did, that they had always felt uncomfortable with the family's demand for silence, but hadn't had the courage to say anything. Some of them apologized for how they had treated me. Some of them shared their own frustrations with the family's toxic dynamics. These conversations didn't lead to full reconciliations. The family had made it clear that anyone who maintained contact with me was betraying them, so these relatives had to choose between the larger family system and having a relationship with me. Most chose the family, which I understood even though it hurt. But knowing that some of them privately agreed with me that I wasn't crazy or wrong helped heal something inside me. Then, about 18 months after the initial fallout, I heard through one of these secret allies that cracks were forming in the family's united front. Apparently, the person at the center of the original situation had done something else. Another betrayal, another deception. And now others in the family were experiencing what I had experienced. The pressure to stay silent, to cover up, to pretend everything was fine. Some of them were starting to question whether the price of family unity was too high. I didn't take any pleasure in this. I didn't feel vindicated or satisfied. I just felt sad that it had taken more harm, more lies, more people being hurt, for anyone else to start questioning the system. And I wondered how many of them would actually have the courage to do what I did, or if they would ultimately choose to go along to get along, to maintain their place in the family even if it meant betraying themselves. As I'm sitting here now, more than 2 years after I found that box in the attic, I can honestly say that walking away from my family was one of the hardest and best decisions I've ever made. I won't lie and say I'm completely at peace with it. There are still moments of grief, still days when I miss them desperately, still times when I question everything. The loss of family is a unique kind of grief because it's ongoing. They're not dead. They're just gone from my life by choice, theirs and mine. I see them continuing their lives without me, and it's a strange feeling, like being a ghost watching life go on after you've left. But I also know that I couldn't have lived with myself if I had made the other choice. If I had agreed to their demands, if I had buried that truth and pretended everything was fine, it would have eaten away at me from the inside. I would have lost myself trying to keep their approval. And what good is having a family if you have to sacrifice your soul to be part of it? I've learned so much through this experience. I've learned that family is supposed to be a soft place to land, not a prison that requires you to check your integrity at the door. I've learned that love without respect, without the freedom to be honest, without the safety to have boundaries, isn't really love at all. It's control dressed up in the language of love. I've learned that blood doesn't automatically make someone worthy of a place in your life, that DNA doesn't give anyone the right to demand your silence or your complicity. I've learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who are hurting you, even if those people are your family. I've learned that you can survive the loss of your family of origin and build a chosen family, a family of people who love you for who you are, who celebrate your truth instead of trying to silence it, who support your boundaries instead of punishing you for having them. I've also learned that this kind of family estrangement is far more common than most people realize. We live in a culture that worships the idea of family, that treats blood ties as sacred and unbreakable, that makes people feel guilty and ashamed for walking away from toxic family members. But so many people are quietly dealing with this same situation, cutting ties with parents or siblings or extended family because staying in relationship with them was destroying their mental health, their self-worth, their very sense of self. We need to talk about this more openly. We need to acknowledge that not all families are healthy, that not all parents deserve access to their children, that not all siblings are worth keeping in your life. We need to stop treating family estrangement as a failure or a tragedy and start recognizing that sometimes it's an act of self-preservation, a boundary that protects people from ongoing harm. If you're reading this or watching this and you're in a situation where your family is pressuring you to ignore your truth, to keep their secrets, to make yourself small so they can stay comfortable, I want you to know something. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not wrong to want honesty, accountability, and respect. Your truth matters. Your boundaries matter. You matter. And if your family cannot or will not honor that, it's okay to create distance. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose yourself, even when it feels impossibly hard, even when it costs you relationships you treasured, even when everyone is telling you that you're wrong. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. You have to look at yourself in the mirror every morning. And if maintaining your family relationships requires you to betray your values, to silence your voice, to pretend that wrong is right, then those relationships are costing you too much. I'm not saying it's easy. God knows it's not easy. The grief is real, the loss is profound, and there will be days when you question everything and wonder if you made the right choice. But you cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You cannot destroy your own integrity to protect someone else's reputation. You cannot sacrifice your mental health and peace of mind for the sake of family harmony that was only ever an illusion anyway. So here's what I want you to do. If you're going through something similar, or if this story resonated with you in any way, first I want you to comment below and tell me about your experience. Have you ever been pressured to keep a family secret? Have you ever had to choose between your truth and your family's comfort? Have you made the choice to walk away? Or are you still struggling with the decision? Share your story in the comments because I know that reading other people's experiences helps us feel less alone, helps us understand that we're not crazy, that our feelings are valid. Your story matters, and there are people here who will understand and support you. Second, I want you to really sit with the message of this video and understand how important it is. This isn't just my story. This is the story of thousands, maybe millions of people who have had to make impossible choices because their families valued comfort over truth, appearances over authenticity, control over love. Understanding this, recognizing these patterns in your own life or in the lives of people you know, could be life-changing. It could give you permission to set boundaries you've been afraid to set, to speak truths you've been afraid to speak, to choose yourself in ways you've been taught are selfish but are actually essential for your well-being. Third, if this video touched your heart, if it made you feel seen or validated or less alone, please leave a like. It helps me know that this content is meaningful to you, and it helps the YouTube algorithm share this message with others who might need to hear it. Fourth, please subscribe to Living Through It for more stories like this. Real stories from real people about the hard choices we have to make, the difficult relationships we have to navigate, the ways we survive and even thrive after loss and betrayal and heartbreak. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video, because I'm committed to creating a space where we can talk honestly about these difficult topics, where we can support each other through the hardest moments of life, where we can remind each other that we're not alone in our struggles. This channel is about living through the hard stuff and coming out the other side, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me on this journey. Remember, choosing yourself is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not mean. Walking away from toxicity is not failure. Sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do is to say no, to refuse to play along, to drop the people who are demanding you drop your truth. They pressured me to drop it for the family, and I dropped them from my life instead. And I'm still here, still standing, still healing, still learning how to build a life that's authentic and true. You can do this too. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.